to the CFB Super Show. 2023 season is here. I'm, of course, your host, Walter Waddell, a.k.a. Dub Deuce 85. I'm super excited. Now, this whole summer, I've been grinding through college basketball, transfer portal talk, conference previews. You guys grinded with me. You guys watched me, supported me. I appreciate that. Then we flipped the switch. We went over to college football. We talked about the vast array of changes, all the transfer portal information, tons of stuff going on. Then we went through and did some conference breakdowns. Last week, we had actually the most views on the show combined from YouTube/Twitter. Appreciate it. That was our week 0 first look. Very, very excited about this season. It's going to be our best one yet. And I feel very, very confident with the landscape of the industry right now and FTN in such a good position that it is. I feel very, very excited about our product. So that brings me into about FTN. If you're not a member already, you still have a chance to get in there. The NFL is coming up. Of course, we're grinding through the preseason. They had the early bird stuff. But if you sign up using the code DUB, D-U-B, you will still get 10% off. And that's all of sports. That's not only written content. That's the Opto stuff that we have. That's projections that are coming through. We have all kinds of articles. You can get on the betting side with that. Check out prop betting stuff. There's all kinds of information happening. So FTN, the Discord, the community there, one of the more valuable parts of not only our product, but really like what I offer because of the fact that, yes, we have the articles, we have the shows, we have all that. But there's very, and I'm confident in this. I can say this confidently. Very few people who will be in the Discord for hours at a time, grinding with you, presenting you with news, giving you late injury stuff, 2 minutes into the slate, pronouncing it over, going completely ballistic for a random touchdown that we called. Then we gear up, we go through the day. We have that late night slate where we talk about that. That's one of our more profitable slates. So the Discord is one of the better parts of it. Of course, everything is great about it, but that Discord community keeps us going and makes everything that much more fun. Now, I've been doing the solo thing all summer. You guys have heard me talk quite a bit. I've heard enough of myself as well. There's not just my face as that graphic comes across the CFB Super Show. We had to talk to some agents. We had to do our thing. We had to make sure he could still be on. But the two faces on there, not only myself, but the San Francisco Giants guy himself, Jake Kuchak, will be joining me not only tonight, but the foreseeable future on this show. We are going to be doing some very in-depth previews throughout the season. You guys know the last couple of seasons, us together. My man Jake, I'm very excited for him to be back. So what we're going to do tonight, of course, game-by-game breakdowns, the tried and true way to really break down a DFS slate. And then, of course, we're going to go through We'll talk about cores at the end. We'll give our takes there. Any hot takes. We'll talk about some PrizePicks stuff. That's one thing that Jake is really good at. And then, of course, any betting information, prop bets, anything like that we want to do. And then, of course, leading into Saturday, we'll kind of reel it all in, and then we'll get into lock and be ready to go. So let's go ahead and haven't had to do this for a while. Let's fix this up for not just me, but Moss. What's up, man? How you doing?
What up? There we go. I'm excited, man. Excited to jump into this.
Yeah, it's people have been following you. They know your baseball content and everything, and I've been waiting to get you on the show here. I haven't been bothering you throughout the baseball season, but now that you're available, we're going to tackle these slates and make some people some money. So week 0 is our warm up slate, and then we'll be ready to go in the foreseeable future. And not only me in the there we go. That's what I wanted. Okay. Not only me in the Discord, but you're in there, grinding away and portraying or calling slates over early too. So I got you in that tilt fest too, and your tilt reserves are nice and full heading into the
tilt
season.
Magic.
I know I can count on you for that, right?
Absolutely.
All right. See some of you in the live chat there. If you guys have questions as we go, we'll circle back around and answer those. Otherwise, let's go ahead and jump right into the slate. We'll get started here. Now there is I was wondering how they do it. FanDuel, it looks like they did an all-day slate, which I'll kind of at the end talk about that. Some people asked me about FanDuel. But they're going to be just doing the main slate here on DraftKings and then a 2-game early slate. So I will talk a little bit more about that. Or I'll have a piece in the article and then Saturday morning. But we're mainly going to concentrate on the DraftKings main slate, just so you guys know. But if you have FanDuel questions, please ask them, and I'll circle back around to those. All right, so the first game I want to talk about on the slate, and it's one that it's cool because me and Jake, we agree on a lot of stuff, but it's nice we have this dynamic where we do disagree on things and kind of are able to explain ourselves in that regard. But this Ohio game versus San Diego State is one where I think we definitely are differing, at least initially here. Looking at the DK odds, it was starting out San Diego State -3.5. It's now down to -3. I know it's a half point only. I know you like the San Diego State side there. The total has stayed at 49 as well, but I was liking that Ohio +3.5. Did get a little bit on that. Now it's -3 on the San Diego State side. Again, people have heard me talk all summer, so why don't you start us off? The new season, 2023, first game, first disagreement. It's Maction, but it's San Diego State defense, of course. I know. Break down this game for us. Tell us what's what.
Yeah, and it's hard for me to go against the Maction because we all love that, but it just kind of speaks to me. It's an August game. San Diego State obviously playing at home. It's going to be pretty warm still. I know we had the hurricane last weekend, so that's a little bit atypical for Southern California having a quote unquote hurricane, but probably going to be pretty warm. Gonna test the durability and athleticism of both sides, but pretty much I expect the San Diego State team to just be more prepared for the game, more prepared for the weather, better conditioning, better athleticism to begin with. And they're probably not a team they'd do real well traveling to the Midwest in November, but in August I think we might have a home field advantage going the other way, and so I think we probably see some tentativeness on both sides, it being the first game of the season as the teams kind of feel each other out. And we also see, probably not a ton of points being put up. San Diego State historically has had a pretty tough defense. I don't know that that's going to be the case this year, but starting off with a MAC team, I think gives them a good shot at building some confidence. So I know you were on the Ohio side, and as much as I probably would also be on the other side of that, I feel more strongly about the under in this one. I think under and under by a decent amount. I think this is going to be kind of a slog of a game, and a lot of offensive creativity or attempts at offensive creativity probably aren't going to work. I think we are going to see a lot of 2 and 3 yard runs from both teams as they kind of try to establish themselves and get after it and be physical. I don't necessarily see a lot of explosive plays in this one, and I think a war of attrition will probably favor the team with higher caliber athletes, which I think is going to be San Diego State. So, yes, I'm still on the San Diego State side, but more on the under. And then from a DFS perspective, if I'm on the under on a game that doesn't have a super massive total to begin with, I'm probably not going out of my way to grab a whole lot of folks from this game. The big name in Maction is always, well, I guess it's the combo of Rourke and Wiggless. They hooked up quite a bit, found the end zone quite a bit. Wiggless started out at Ohio State, very talented athlete, at least in terms of the MAC. Against San Diego State secondary, might not have quite as much effectiveness, probably not getting that 100-yard multiple touchdown upside that he would have in Maction. So not a horrible play in a vacuum on a slate where we're going to need to get some good receiver production. Paying $7,100 for him is probably a little bit more than I'm willing to go. Now at quarterback, I mean, Rourke at 5,500 is definitely in play. It's just, how many pieces of this game do you really want if you think it's going to go under? And so, I'm going to say you're going to go with Rourke as probably one of your main guys. I'm not going to do that just because of the way I tend to correlate my lineups, but I can certainly understand that as a play. And then, even though they're the team that I would favor to win the game, I'm probably not in on anybody on the San Diego State side. Just too much of a spread out offense, not enough production not enough production in general, and then not enough production concentrated within any one player yet. Raphael Williams might be an exception to that. But I still think it's going to be a wait and see for me from this offense to see kind of how they roll things out, what they try to do, and then how effective they are. So yeah, not a game I want too many pieces of, other than sprinkling some Rourke in case I'm incredibly wrong about both the under and the Ohio side, and I don't want to get left behind.
Yeah, man, it's tough. If this was a spot where Rourke was like appropriately priced at like 7 or 8K, I think it may be more or easier for me to get away from. It's just silly how cheap he is. But I do, looking at it a little more in depth after last week, it's definitely not looking great for him against, I'd say, upper tier defenses. You look at last year when he completely nuked it. He had the great game against Florida Atlantic. Of course, it's Florida Atlantic, and then he had Penn State and Iowa State right after, which he threw the ball 30 plus times, but was generally pretty awful in those games before he went and tore it up again. Also coming off of the serious injury, that's always tough. He's gonna play, but there's people on Twitter saying that they might take it easy with him. And if that's the case, there's still a chance where maybe he struggles to fully eclipse value. And we know everybody's going to, for the most part. I started looking, I like to write my stuff first, which I pretty much have done. And then I start looking around the industry at what people are saying. And as expected, everybody is, USC, which we get. So taking a shot at somebody in this Ohio game, and if it goes under, like you said, you're pretty much dead to rights really early in the day, which is going to be kind of tough. But that price of 5.5 is certainly tough for me to get away from. I haven't fully decided how I want to go there yet, but it's going to be very difficult for me not to use them. What I'm hoping happens that people look at Bangura from last year and kind of just figure, plug him in and expect that kind of production. So
I probably should have touched on that. Is we're not getting the 20 plus touch game from him that people that look at last year's game logs are gonna expect from him. So gonna mix in some O'Shawn Allison when they have the ball, which I don't expect to be a ton, but yes.
Yeah, and the tough thing there is like, they didn't price Allison all that cheap. I was hoping he'd come in at like min price and be like, shit, man, this guy, you can throw him out there and maybe get a touchdown possibly or a couple of touches, but they priced him at 6K. So it's a little bit tougher there. Not a main team play by any means, but I'm just hoping that there's enough touches to get pulled away from Bangura. And I don't expect him to get like 40% ownership, but if he gets anything between like 15, 20, I think that could potentially hurt those lineups. So that's kind of what I'm looking there. If Ohio, they fall behind a little bit and they got to throw the ball, you mentioned Wigloose. There's still a lot of continuity there in that receiver room. Jacoby Jones, Miles Cross, Tyler Walton still doling around there. They have a pretty nice group of receivers. And when we get to the Maction slates, of course, we'll be talking about this team. And you won't have Rourke at this price during those Maction games. So really going to be our only opportunity to get him this cheap. Now, looking at the San Diego State side, they have a 2 deep out. I didn't see a specific beyond that, but for me, I really expected Keon Kristen to be the guy at running back. Killed it at camp, looked really good. Everybody talked about him, but then the 2 deep comes out and there's an OR tag there, and then at Cam Davis, not the Cam Davis who was just injured from my neck of the woods, but Cam Davis, who's 5K on this DK slate, looking like he's going to be the one to get the first carries, but in true San Diego State fashion, there'll be multiple guys getting touches here, and that's pretty much been the case, even the last couple of years. And when they've had some bigger name running backs we've been able to lean on, they still have been able to give 5, 6, 7 touches to their backups. And there's other guys in the mix here who are going to get touches. So I feel like Davis or Kriston are nice looks here, especially if it's going to be more of a rougher, drag them down, lower score. One of those 2 guys could definitely pay out, but it's probably not a situation where we can use them in the main lineup just yet, because I'm not sure I trust who's going to be able to get the most carries. Right now, looking at it, looks like more people are on Kristen, which would make me push towards Cam Davis, but I'll kind of have to dig in a little bit more there. But at this point, I think I might be with you. If I'm not playing Rourke, there's really nobody else in this game that I would be looking to play. And that depth chart initially on SDSU sides has me a little bit scared. I do see a little bit of maiden talk around the industry. 5.9 is a decent price for him, but the wide receiver groups, it's not that great. There's a lot of guys who are going to have to prove themselves in the San Diego State offense. They're going to have those weeks where an Aztecs receiver goes off and people are going to be like, wow, why weren't we on them? Well, the previous 3 weeks, they had like 3 targets. That's why. So they have that kind of stuff happening for them all the time. And it's going to be really tough for me to want to use anybody in this game either, which is tough because usually Ohio's giving up points and they're scoring points. But I think you might be on the right track here with how San Diego State's going to play it. All right, moving right along here, we are going to go to the next game, which is almost even like worse, having a UMass team on the slate. Now, during the week 0 first look, I kind of talked about different scenarios and how these guys could look. We do have UMass versus New Mexico State. Right now, it's -7 for New Mexico State, which is 1 point less. They started out at -8, and it's a 45 total now from a 44.5. So not a huge deal there, but even less points expected than the game we just talked about. Starter-wise for UMass, they are going to give the ball to Tyson Pumachan, who is a former P5 transfer. I did think for a moment there Carlos Davis might get the starting gig because of how good he looked in camp and scrimmages, but Tyson's going to get the first look there. He's only 4'8", does have some rushing upside there, hasn't shown himself to be a very good passer at the collegiate level, but in high school he was an absolute stud. So 4'8", you running multiple lineups, that is somebody who is at least somewhat interesting to a degree. Have you had a chance to really kind of dig into this one? I know it's a game. Usually when they're UMass, you're not really looking to them, but is there anybody here that you can maybe pull some value out of? A guy like Anthony Simpson, who's been getting a lot of talk on Twitter, or the converted running back to tight end Gino Campiati? Is there any names kind of sticking out to you that we might be able to get as stakes here?
So, I mean, I kind of wish that Diego Pavia's price was down where Rourke was to at least entice that a little bit or spread out that ownership a little bit. I don't know that I can commit to 7-4 for Diego Pavia just because of the horrendous kind of overall context of the game. But I think again, in a vacuum like that, he's had some tremendous upside type games, and they were against Liberty and all that, but like this is UMass. Like this is not a difficult team that he's playing in this one, and more experience in the system, more experience with the same offensive coordinator. I think that there is. Let's put it this way. I think there's more of a world in which Diego Pavia, even at 7-4, ends up in an optimal lineup than I do Rourke does at 5-5. That makes sense, just because of the contrarian nature that'll force you into from his price point. It's everybody in the world is going to play Caleb Williams. Like you're just not going to not play Caleb Williams, right? So you're really only choosing one other quarterback on the slate, and I think Pavia is actually pretty decent size. He's got the rushing upside, and he's got the best matchup of a quarterback who has a reasonable price for what he's capable of doing, and the team should be able to do what they want, and that hasn't always been enough for New Mexico State, but I think there's some opportunity there.
Yeah, and if you go the Pavia route, the name to use is Cordell David, sitting there at 4.7. Looks like he has potentially some slate breaking upside. He's been really, really good all summer long. If ever there was a New Mexico State guy to take, it's definitely him, and he's going to be their WR1. It looks like pretty confident in that. So you have a little bit of a nice pairing partner there for super cheap. Running backs wise, New Mexico State running backs haven't really been the juice, at least the last couple of seasons. So it's kind of tougher there. I'm probably not looking to use any of those guys here initially. Star Thomas is going to get the first look, I guess. Jamani Jones at 4.8, a pretty nice little GPP alt play. Both of those guys getting work. But again, they'll be splitting touches. And I think there's some other guys that we can look at here that maybe won't be splitting touches, which as we're going to get to those games. And then again, at the wide receiver spot, Cordell David. Now on the UMass side, this kid, Gino Campiati is interesting because he's super cheap, 3.2. He's converted running back, so that you got that. But Anthony Simpson at this near min price of 3.5, he's the one that I'm really the most excited about, and I may end up getting myself in trouble and running him. There's always that third wide receiver. I'm kind of have to take that cheap guy and really beg for a touchdown, or like that 550 5 catch 550 yard stat line for those min price guys that we're always talking about. He might be the guy. There was multiple quarterbacks to the end for UMass between Tyson and Davis and other guys, and all of them were hitting Simpson a lot. Every single play when they were neck and neck, it was Simpson's name that was making those grabs. So I'm really interested to see how that turns out, and if he ends up getting a lot of work, heavy targets, how this offense is going to look. But at 3.5, he's certainly worth some exposure in some of your alt builds. Is he a main team play? Maybe not. Depends on how much of that USC exposure that you're going to get. But he's somebody to at least have on your radar here initially.
Pulling deep from the UMass 2 deep. I love it.
All right, moving on here, we have the next game, which is we're starting to get in a little more exciting territory here with Vanderbilt versus Hawaii. Now, there's some surprises here on the Vanderbilt side, at least, because I know there was, especially you early on talking about Cedric Alexander, the freshman running back for Vanderbilt. Looked like he was going to get a lot of the work throughout camp as well, but they do release the depth chart with Patrick Smith sitting atop there. Now, I still think we'll see them, Cedric get work, but it is a little bit concerning that he's, not at the top there. He's actually third on that list. And I don't know if it was like they couldn't resist putting, Patrick Smith's nickname of Cheeks on there or what that was, but he's going to get the start for now. So it does take some of that luster off of a guy like Cedric Alexander. However, everything I've read coming into the season, by midseason, most people think that he will be the RB1 for this team. So I think they're starting out with a little more of an experienced guy, and then they'll work that freshman into there, and eventually it's going to be his job. So we may be a little early on him at 3.7, but he's going to be somebody who I'm pretty confident will be like 6K midseason on those Vanderbilt slates. So don't completely zero him out and not have any exposure to him at all, because he's definitely going to be in the mix there to a degree. Let me pull it out. I had to get it off of Twitter here. Other guys, pretty much as expected. AJ Swan at quarterback, the receiver room, all that continuity there with Will Shepherd, Quincy Skinner, Jaden McGowan. So you have all those guys back. Price-wise, you're looking at some reasonable price. Shepherd, especially at 5K. Shepherd would be my favorite, the more well-known to me. And it's not just like looking at his box score, like, oh, he averaged more fantasy points is my favorite. It has really nothing to do with that. Just that he's a better player, has gotten targets over the years, and has been a kind of a key cog for this offense. As bad as it's been. And I know not a lot of people outside of, Vanderbilt fans pay attention to their program, but Shepherd's been a pretty reliable fantasy option for us the last season or two. So I like him as the best look out of there. McGowan at 6.4, that would be pretty much, GPP only for me. I don't think there's any reason to pay that much more for him. I don't think his production will be that much more higher. I'm not going to kid myself and think that Shepherd's going to be some sort of low-owned play either, because that price is pretty low for him. And people that do look at box scores are going to see that he's been the best receiver for them. Swan's price coming in there at 8.5, it's a little bit of a shock for me. I think he's certainly going to have viable games this year, but 8.5 is just not a price that you'd see me pay. So for Vandy, I'm not looking to pair. I know a lot of people like to only use receivers with the quarterbacks that they use. For me, I'm fine just using Shepherd by himself. And then again, circling back around here to Vanderbilt, don't give up on Alexander just yet. Get an alt lineup of him, because if you miss and he scores like 2 touchdowns and you're like, shoot, Patrick Smith started, but he's only got 2 touches. What's the deal? You're going to feel awfully bad about yourself. So make sure that you get someplace somewhere. On the Hawaii side, I'm not crazy about the quarterback situation for Hawaii, but I do like the fact that the legend, Coach Shanks they're going to get back to that, fun offense. They're going to be throwing it a lot. There's going to be a lot of points and opportunities, but this is not the week to use Braden Shaker, and it rarely is going to be the week to use him. I'm just not that excited about him as a quarterback. Instead, it's going to be all about Tylan Hines, who I really wanted to just will to be a sneak, if you will. But he's going to be super highly owned because he's only priced at 4.7. I would have almost preferred him to be like 6.5 so that people could have maybe talked themselves out of it, and I would have been fine just jamming him in every lineup. I talked at length last week about how the Hawaii RB1 / RB2 get slot work. They get a lot of passes out of the backfield. They get, massive touches everywhere. he is going to get a ton of work. And when he's not lined up in the backfield, they will use him as a pass catcher. So Hines is going to be a dude that gets an absolute ton. And as the kind of the backup last year, you saw he had over 600 yards on the ground. So big things expected from Tylan Hines. I guess you could go with, hey, Vanderbilt's an SEC defense. They're going to make life difficult. And sure, that might be the case. Maybe Hawaii doesn't score as much, although there is the total of 56, which has gone up a point, and Vanderbilt favored by 17.5. So Hines, maybe he doesn't get the running back work, but again, he's going to get passes out of the backfield, and they will use him a lot out of the slot as well, just like they have done in the past with their starting running back. So Hines is still the dude for me and absolutely a core play. I'm not going to overthink that. The the wide receiver situation for Hawaii is going to be as tricky as ever. There are several names that are going to be in the mix. Guys like Stephen McBride, who I hit on last week's, Jonah Pinnock, who most people know. There's going to be some lower end guys, mid-price guys who do pop off from time to time. That's just the nature of this offense. And if you're running multiple lineups, you can just kind of cycle through the various wide receivers, because there are going to be one or two that have 100+ yards in this game, or maybe they catch 2 touchdowns, because that's just how this offense is going to look this year. What are you doing with Vanderbilt and Hawaii? I know you were high on Alexander. He's like your first call out when the slate first dropped, but what are you doing?
Yeah. So, I mean, I was high on Alexander, and then it was like, okay, well, if he does get that first notch on the depth chart, he's going to be like 85% owned. And so maybe it's not such a good thing, or it's not such a bad thing if he didn't get the nod. And so I think what's going to happen with Vandy, and had they not had a quarterback run it for like 72 times in the Hawaii game last year, they would have had probably like 60 carries to split up between 3 running backs. And even so, that was the first day of big PrizePicks. I don't know if you recall, but we were chasing Davis rushing yards, and that hit for us, and that was pretty good. Even with a lot of quarterback rushing yards going alongside that. But my point is, I think there's going to be a lot of guys running the ball for Vanderbilt, because they're going to have the ball a lot. I think Hawaii is going to struggle to move the ball. A lot of quick 3-and-outs, a lot of quick turnovers. They're going to throw it a lot, so there's going to be a lot of clock stoppages. And on the other side, I think Vandy's going to just kind of do whatever they want on offense. And generally what they want is to either throw to Shepard or to run the ball down Hawaii's throat. And so I don't think it's going to be like an Ibra situation where all of a sudden, Smith or Gillespie gets 35 carries for some reason. Like, I think it's going to be a pretty even rotation, and between Smith at 51, Gillespie at 46, and Alexander at 37, still like Alexander at 37 amongst those 3, even if he's getting, a 30 to 35% carry share. I think he's going to be pretty efficient, as are the other 2. But I think there's going to be even more efficiency with Alexander. And, if he gets in the end zone once and gets 50 to 60 yards at 3,700, it's not bad, especially if he's doing it at reduced ownership based on the fact that everyone saw he's 3rd on the depth chart. Also, and I think this was another point of disagreement for us, I also think that Vandy just completely smokes Hawaii. And so there might be more of that garbage time where you see a freshman that's lower on the depth chart get a chance to prove himself in a way that, if they were matching up with Georgia, he might not get on the field quite that soon. So I think the stars are not perfectly aligned, but they're aligned enough that there are still paths to success for Alexander. And so, like you said, I think it's even a notch higher than, not backing off him completely. I think you can still throw in like a 30 to 35% ownership and be well over the field on Alexander. And, if you do get that explosive game at that low price, you can still benefit from it to a degree. But you're not, the 80 to 85% rostered that you would have been if he was number 1 on the depth chart and definitely going to get 25 carries or something like that. So still in on him, still probably in on him to a higher degree than most, but ratcheting it back from my original expectation. And then with Shepard, I'm right there with you. It's, way too low of a price for Shepard. passing game will go through him. And, I would say probably 680 in a touchdown is a reasonable expectation. For Shepard, obviously the touchdown's kind of high variance. They probably won't be throwing a ton towards the end of the game. So if you want him to get there, he's probably got to get there early. But tough to get away from that one too. And then Hines, like you said, on the Hawaii side, that's also tough to get away from because the price is just ridiculous for the usage that he's going to have. Very, very typical Hawaii running back situation where the quarterback is bad and spends a lot of time not having a lot of time to throw and dumping off to the running back. And then if you got pretty athletic running back on top of that, anytime he's got some room to roam and can lead to fantasy goodness. So I think, probably maximum of 3 guys from this game for me, and it would be Alexander, Hines, and Shepard. And if you use a quarterback from this game, I don't know what to tell you. You couldn't convince me to do that, but I think you probably have to go Swan because I can't even at a somewhat reduced price. I can't get to Shager, and I definitely can't get to Shager on the road against an SEC defense. Yes, Vanderbilt is still an SEC defense, even if they're not the top tier of that. So, yeah, I think Swan's price is ridiculous. It would be very contrarian to use him. But if you wanted to stack up him and Shepard, it would be crazy, but it wouldn't be the craziest thing in the world.
Yeah, and it could actually work because after the QB1 that everyone will have, that second quarterback, there's going to be a lot of variance there with that optimal, and it could end up being Swan. Even if Swan doesn't destroy value, he could just have the most points after Caleb. So I'm in agreement with you on those 3 players, and the only hope there is that people come over to college football a lot from the NFL mindset, and a lot of people don't like to play running backs playing each other because it, game script wise and all that. But in college, you can absolutely play 2 running backs going against each other and have a lot of production. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Hines and Alexander get a lot of second half work here if this one gets out of hand as quickly as we might think. All right, moving right along to the marquee game, the one that will have the most ownership on the slate. You'll have people coming in and just full stacking it and thinking that they're doing something that that nobody else could possibly have figured out with this USC versus San Jose State game. Now, it's a real fun one. Both sides should be able to score points. Now, USC is 30.5-point favorites, and initially I thought there might be an opportunity there for SJSU to cover that. And what's going to happen, I think they'll still score a fair amount of points, but USC, what's going to happen? The first half, there's going to be some shakiness that happens. There's going to be the hot takers on Twitter. And then in the second half, USC is going to come out and score 3 touchdowns in a row. And they're going to have built that 40-plus lead. So I'm going to stay away from that one. But I am not afraid of the other side in this one at all. The total has moved up to 67 on DraftKings after it started at 64.5. So people are certainly hitting the over there. There's going to be a lot of exposure. And you mentioned early on, everybody having Caleb Williams, I'm happy they didn't price him something stupid at like $7K, but it wouldn't have mattered. I would have almost just rather they priced him at like the max, 10, 5, 11, whatever they could get to, because he is going to see 70% of ownership, possibly more, single entry and cash games, even more, of course. And there'll be the people who try to get away from him if, God forbid, an injury happens or, he has a bad game, or the running back score all the touchdowns, which is theoretically something that could happen. Now, this USC team is extraordinarily deep at the running back, tight end, and wide receiver position. So I think a lot of times we're going to see people go to right away stacking them, and they're going to come away feeling kind of down about themselves. If you plan to do that and you're a multi-enter, you're going to want to rotate through the different options. And I want to get your take here because I talked about it last week. You start us off here because you had a guy on this USC team that you're super hyped about also, but maybe not on the highest depth chart as we were wanting. So I want to get your take on USC in the game in general.
Yeah. So, touch briefly on Caleb, play Caleb. You can be contrarian and throw in like a Rourke Pavia lineup, I guess, if you want to just get super wild. And if you do that, then you're playing all the USC running backs because that's what you're betting, is that all the stuff happens via the ground. But what are we trying to do here? We're trying to get to get Caleb a second Heisman. We're trying to get Caleb number 1 overall pick. We're trying to keep Caleb from getting hurt at the same time. The good news is I don't think that the San Jose State pass rush is going to get to him too much. I think the athleticism on the outside is going to get separation. I think the coaching is just worlds different, and so I think there's a lot of opportunity for USC to do exactly what it wants. Yeah, they might start a little bit slow or run the ball into the line a few too many times and maybe have to punt once or twice in the first half. But more or less, this is going to be a 304 kind of game for Caleb. And so like nobody else has that floor, not even close to it on this slate. So I think that pretty much sums up what we need to say about him. As far as the backfield goes, they are deep to a degree, but like no one is elite. You're not turning the ball over to a guy that's going to get 30 carries and just pound the rock all game. Like there's going to be rotation within this backfield. It ended up being Austin Jones and Marshawn Lloyd with an or designation, and kind of the beat writer lean has been Austin Jones. And I think probably what we'll see is, he'll be the one to get the bulk of the carries at first, and they will mix in Marshawn Lloyd. And once things get out of hand, we might see some Darwin Barlow. We might see some Quentin Joyner. We also, and I'm glad you brought it up, we might see some Raleek Brown out of the backfield. There's been plenty of hints that despite the positional switch for good old Raleek Brown, who's 4,300 by the way, he's not out of play because of the low depth chart. He's also got a super low price, so interesting GPP spot for him. But they're gonna utilize him in kind of like the offensive weapon role as opposed to being a pure slot receiver, which they're going to design some plays for him. There's probably going to be swing passes and bubble screens, things where you can get him in space. And so he doesn't need, 12 touches to do damage the way he did as a running back. He might only need 4 or 5, and they might go for a pretty long ways against a shoddy defense like San Jose State. And so, yeah, you're probably going to get him at lower ownership because he's 4th on the depth chart at the slot receiver position, and he also had a positional change in the offseason. But that doesn't take me off him entirely because I am stubborn. And so if you want to talk about actual receivers, I guess we should probably do that too. The injury to Mario Williams, I think, is not going to be a major factor. So we're going to have a starting trio of Dorian Singer, the transfer from Arizona, that I think is going to be more or less the alpha as the season develops. I don't think in this game in particular we're going to see like 150 yards and 3 touchdowns from Dorian Singer because they're just not going to concentrate the offense into any one player that much. But he does have that talent, he does have that upside, and he does have Caleb Williams throwing the ball to him. And if you can do well in the Arizona offense, you can do a whole lot better in the Lincoln Riley USC offense. So at 7,700, I don't think this is the slate for Dorian Singer. I think you do want to have that 20-ish% exposure to him in case he does have the crazy game, but I'm not expecting that to happen this game. I would also be kind of cautious with over allocating Mario Williams too much. Yes, there's chemistry there. They have played a lot together, and so you could see 80 and a touchdown. Maybe he gets in the end zone a second time, and that makes him extremely desirable. But I think this is still just a situation where they spread the love around. Taj Washington, kind of the same thing. He'll get on the field. He isn't listed as a starter, so may not see as many reps as Mario Williams, but also this is a game that's going to be out of hand pretty quickly. And so toward the end of the game, maybe we'll see more Taj Washington. Brendan Rice and Kyron Hudson are listed as or designations in the third wide receiver spot. Connor Hudson is quite a bit cheaper than everybody else. And so I think if you're going to try to find the USC receiver that, maybe nobody's on at low ownership and also not going to cost you an arm and a leg, it's either Hudson or it's throwing Raleek in there, hoping for explosive plays that he can break on. And then I haven't even talked about the best receiver of the bunch, Zachariah Branch, who didn't get the depth chart love initially, but I think it's also a situation kind of similar to Cedric Alexander where, you don't want to just hand over a role to a guy. You want to make him earn it, and he can't earn it unless he's on the field. So I think he will still see the field plenty in this one, especially given the, expected blowout nature of the game. And so, you can allocate some to Branch the same way you are to everybody else. So I know you're not getting a lot of great answers here on who to plug in and smash and allocate 80% of your lineups to, but it really is just going to be a spread the love and, see the cream rise to the top as we see it happen kind of game. And so you kind of just want exposure to all of it. Maybe we get some late breaking news that one of them missed team curfew and won't be playing or something, and it narrows the pool from which we have to diversify, but you really want exposure to all of them. I would say for me personally, I'm probably looking at the most exposure over the field on Brown and the least exposure over the field on Singer is probably how I would play it as of right now.
I would have to agree on Singer. I think people are going to see those Arizona numbers. They're going to think there's no Addison. The Singer's going to come in here and put up these big numbers, and he may, and he will have these big games. But knowing that it's the first slate and that people are going to just pile in to the 40% range on Singer is what I would anticipate somewhere in there. It might be going a little too high, but this is going to be your best way to get a little different on a game that's going to be super popular. But the thing is just this USC. I mean, at least with the running back room, which is also very deep, it's, Lloyd and Jones are going to get majority. Like you could play one of those guys. Prices are not the greatest right now, but you can play one of those guys and you're probably getting a touchdown at minimum there. At the wide receiver spot, you may play Singer and maybe he gets like the death line of like 599 and no touchdowns. And then like almost half the field's just dead. There are some banged up, Jackson's banged up, Super Mario you mentioned. There's Taj Washington's always a threat to break a slate, regardless if he's starting or not. We know that. You mentioned Branch, and I see in the chat there some, Aquasaw, my longtime guy there, mentioning Branch. I really like Hudson, man. I know he's got the OR tag with Rice, and he's not going to be owned at all at 4K. I might be falling to the hype that I'm reading a lot of beat reporters calling for breakout season from him, but I have to reel that in because it could be a breakout for a number of guys there. And I also really like the kind of hybrid tight end that they have, because we know how good these pass catching tight ends can be at the collegiate level or the NFL level for that matter. But Deuce Robinson, who's sitting there at 3.6, now he is on the depth chart behind Hudson and Rice there in that wide receiver spot. They're going to be using him as an extra receiver out of the tight end spot as well. So I like those guys a lot. He's a freshman as well. Obviously, Hudson's real young, redshirt sophomore, so you can see some games where these guys, they're just not head-wise, they're not in it. They're going to have these big breakout games. It's going to be really hard to peg on a week-to-week basis. So for differentiation purposes, I do like the option of going cheaper with a guy like Hudson or Robinson or perhaps even Branch. You had mentioned, I know you're all over early
or Brown.
Yeah, for sure. Brown, if he's going to get some carries as well and kind of be used in that Hines way, which we just talked about for Hawaii. If I'm super high on Hines, it would make sense to get some exposure there with Brown. My want right now is to save money at receiver for USC, and I typically like to go cheaper at receiver anyways. I might pay up for one. We every week we talk about this. That's kind of the position for me. I try to skimp on when possible, and I think that any of these guys have just as much chance as the next of getting a touchdown. So with that being said, and Singer expected to have quadruple the ownership of a guy like Hudson, Brown, Branch, it makes more sense for me to use those guys, and I'm not afraid to use them in single entry or cash or main lineups. Like I just am not. I know the industry is, but I'm not. Making sure we're clear on that. So Williams, yes, and then just circle through. You want to play one of the running backs. Like I said, I'm pretty sure you're going to get a touchdown from one of the top two. But on the other side of the game, running back wise, we can get Kyrie Robinson, who, man, feels like he's been there forever at just 5'9". And we know he's capable of entirely breaking a slate. So I do like him there at 5'9". I know they're going to have to throw the football. There's going to be a lot of points, but I don't know that Cordero will necessarily, as bad as the USC defense looked at times, and Cordero can definitely put up some points. I feel like there might be some, jacked up defenders on the field for the Trojans for this first one. And I think they're going to have to give Kyrie like 20 plus touches, whether that's 20 carries or 15 carries and 5 targets, something like that. We know he can catch out of the backfield. So I like Kyrie a lot at 5'9". He's probably my favorite player on this team, straight up on this particular slate. And then I really like the kid that transferred from Utah Tech. I kind of talked about him a little bit. 4'9". I would have loved to seen him near the min price. They also put his stats on there, which I wasn't crazy about. I wish they wouldn't have. He was a 1,000-yard rusher at Utah Tech. Now I know that's Utah Tech, but the fact of the matter is, anytime you rush for over 1,000 yards at any level at the collegiate, level, whether it's D2, D3, whatever, you're a pretty special talent. So I do think he's going to get looks. Now on the depth chart, he does have a or tag in the backup spot, but I'm not that worried about it. I will have some GPP exposure to him, with Kyrie Robinson being kind of my main lineup guy. And then receiver-wise, you have continuity for Cordero. You have Charles Ross there. You have Justin Lockhart. But then you have Nick Nash getting the start as a third wide receiver. And Nick Nash, more of a running quarterback, gadget guy that they have used, to in an offensive weapon type of way. You look at Lockhart, who is 4'8". I know he's got the questionable tag, but he's listed as starter. I'm not really that concerned at 4'8". Ross at 4'6", who I'm seeing getting some ownership love from people, and then Nash sitting there at 4'5". Nash, again, would have been a guy I would have loved to have seen at like 3'5" instead, where I would be really considering him. And I did catch 4 passes for 51 yards and a touchdown late last year to show that he could be a viable receiver, and now he's getting the start. So you definitely can get one of those guys for cheap, especially if we're going to have USC scoring 60-plus points. SJSU is going to have to throw the ball to a degree as well, and Cordero's not a complete stiff. I'm seeing a lot of people calling for the under 240 passing yards for him, which may happen, but again, he's not a complete stiff compared to somebody like a Braden Shager, and I think that he can definitely hit these guys and has a lot of continuity and relationships with them. So I'm a kind of a fan of this San Jose State offense. Kyrie's my main team guy, though, and I'll see what I end up doing with the receiver group. Probably GPP spots for me, but I'm certainly interested in them. It sounds like most people are going to be just piling in USC, 4 guys or whatever, and then forgetting about the other part of that stack with the Spartans. So what on that side are you looking at?
Yeah, Nash is a super interesting call out because, USC is just going to score quickly, and that's going to be a lot of the ball's going to come back to San Jose State, and they're going to be throwing it. Is he going to be in the slot? Is that kind of how they're going to deploy him, or
that's what they're saying? At least.
Okay, so yeah, overmatched opponent, or overmatched against their opponent, and probably quicker reads generally will lead to some slot work and familiarity with the passing tree with him being quarterback, and maybe they throw him in on a trick play or something because he has that ability, and just a lot of athleticism in general. Super interesting call out. I wish I could get to Conley because massive rushing upside. I just unless he gets some of the Tylan Hines work where you're just seeing lots of balls out of the backfield, and then Nash doesn't catch those balls. I would see it tough for a San Jose State running back to get there unless they are going to check down quite a bit. But yeah, I was not really considering Nash before this discussion. I thinking through, how, because obviously I'm gonna have a lot of USC exposure. I do want to have some kind of comeback, and that's a super interesting one. So I'm glad you brought that up. Have to see how much Nash we can work in, because I really like a lot of receiver slots already, and so I wasn't planning on having a whole lot of San Jose State exposure, but I might have to work it in now.
Yeah, and I actually read something about Cordero and Nash, just when Nash was playing quarterback or whatever, but they I guess they play ping pong a lot together, and they've been working out together all summer and have a very strong connection. So sometimes that relationship, even off the field, can lead to more on-field touches. These are kids at the end of the day, so something to consider for sure. I think we'll see people like play Ross and Lockhart as long as there's no like Saturday morning, like these guys are out kind of thing. But yeah, Nash might be somebody who scores, especially if they get it in like the goal line area. They've shown that they're not afraid to give him the rock and let him run sometimes. So I'm certainly looking his way potentially. All right. And yeah, Conley, like you said, I really, really like him. And I think we're going to have opportunities to use him this year, but it looks kind of tough to use him at this price, unfortunately. All right. The last game on the slate here, FIU versus La Tech. This is one that's it's dropped a point. It was 59.5 to start. Now it's 58.5, but it is up one as Louisiana Tech's now minus 11.5 point favorites after being 10.5 point favorites. And I absolutely it's not going to be any secret here. I think most people will like the Louisiana Tech side because we know they can be a pass-heavy offense, and there's a lot to like in this particular game, especially with old friend, as you said in the Discord recently, Hank Bachmeier being in this offense should be able to revitalize himself a little bit. And the fact that this going into the season crowded running back room, with Marquise Crosby, they brought in the kid from Miami, Ohio, Tyree Shelton. They had the one guy from Baylor, but he's decided to drop out of football now. And it's looking like Jarvis Thornton is going to have all of the carries he could possibly want here on Saturday against this FIU team, an FIU defense that I think La Tech will be able to score a lot on. So what's your take on this particular game?
Yeah. So I want to have a lot of exposure everywhere, all around to the La Tech side. I mean, it is a little bit weird to get excited about using Bachmeier because, like, that's not really what comes to mind when he was playing at Boise State. He was kind of just like a middle of the road cash game type quarterback. But like, this is an entirely new context. He has explosive receivers. He's not playing against a tough defense. He's playing against one of the worst defenses that exists. He just like this is going to be Bachmeier unleashed, right? As opposed to, and he's got more experience now. He's coming off an injury, coming off a transfer. Like this is the time for it to all come together for him. Took the over on his PrizePicks pretty quickly. I don't think it's gone up yet, but probably will. And I'm feeling good about that. But yeah, the as far as the running game goes, the consolidation of the depth chart is, I guess, nice for us. Feeling good. Probably is also going to lead to Thornton being pretty high owned. He is, at a pretty compelling price. 5,400 for a guy that's going to get 20 carries against a Swiss cheese defense and probably fall into the end zone a time or two. You want to be on that guy. So between Thornton and Hines, man, it's going to be tough to find a lot of running backs that you're going to want over those two. So it is going to be interesting to see how much more of that offense you can get if you've got the quarterback and the running back. Doesn't leave room for a ton else. You probably only want one pass catcher, and then you have to decide between Smoke Harris and Cyrus Allen. Obviously, they're both pretty good. The $900 difference, I think I'm probably going to lean towards Cyrus Allen on this, but I could see Smoke having a pretty good day too. Probably, 6 to 8 catches and 65 to 80 yards, and then it just comes down to who catches the touchdowns between the two of them. So if you're going with Bachmeier as your quarterback and you're not doing the Rourke thing, you're not doing the Pavia thing, and you're not doing the Swan thing, you're going with Bachmeier, you got to have one of those pass catchers because that is a pretty consolidated offense in terms of the expectation of who's going to get a lot of those targets, and those guys are kind of head and shoulders above everybody else. So do you want one or do you want both? And if you want both, who are you stacking up with on the other side? And you also have Thornton in there too. Starts to be a lot of exposure if you also want a lot of USC exposure, right? And so I'm trying to find ways to work in Bachmeier. I'm having trouble getting there because I want to use Thornton so much. I'll probably have some lineups that are just complete, Louisiana Tech onslaughts that have, QB, 2 wide receivers and a running back and just hope they dominate. Right. And if you do that kind of thing, you're going to need to come back with somebody on the AFIU side. What I'm interested in on how you're looking at it, other than Shamari Lawrence at running back, what exposure are you interested in on the FIU side? I don't love a lot of things that are happening with their passing game. I don't love a whole lot of things about Grayson James. He did put up a heck of a game against Louisiana Tech last season. Not sure that we see a repeat of that, and not sure that we see quite as much explosiveness from his receiving group this year. Or maybe you're going to talk me out of it. Let's see. What do you got?
No, in fact, I'm pretty down on Grayson James. They have the younger kid who came in, Keon Jenkins, who I personally feel like if James just kind of falters out these first 2 or 3 games and just a lame duck, can't get anything going, I think they might turn to him quickly. So I'm actually really excited about his upside if he plays. I would have been way happier to see him get the start.
Yeah,
but I knew it was going to take.
That would have been a different story if we got to see him right away. That could have been interesting.
For sure. So I kind of figured that, but yeah, so you're the call out on Lawrence. Yeah, he's going to get a lot of touches. And then the wide receiver group, it's tough because you want to have, we just talked about it with San Jose State. You want to have somebody on the other side of that stack. Typically Chris Mitchell, I guess he's maybe the most obvious. He's also the most expensive as kind of that big play guy. I think that I don't love that. I think Jalen Bracey most is kind of like that slot look, and somebody who for PPR formats like DK can get us some points, quickly. Because we're going to need obviously Mitchell to connect on a big play. We're going to need Patterson to make some plays. They do have that Memphis transfer, Eric Rivers, who's been pretty highly talked about and hyped up throughout camp. So he's another guy to look at. But I think for me, if I'm going there, I'm kind of looking at Bracey, and it's tough because he's not that cheap at 5.3, but we also have so many cheap options that we've already really talked about. And most of the guys in our group outside of Caleb Williams are not even above, 6.5, 7K. So we can hit 5.3 for a receiver if we think he's going to get a bunch of targets out of the slot and feel pretty good about it. So he's the guy I think that I'm looking at the most out of that receiver room. But at this point, I don't even know if I want to do that, because like Lawrence is the one that you want to use. And in the past, even in bad game scripts, quote unquote, FIU running backs have paid off for us. So I think Lawrence will still get work and still do well, but it's hard to get that excited about him, which is tough because I want to stack everybody on the Tech side. And Smoke Harris, he's awesome. It's going to be great. Cyrus Ellen's going to be good. And then the third starter out of there coming out is that Hawaii transfer, True Edwards, who didn't play at all last year, had to sit out. I know our transfers don't typically have to sit out anymore, but he was part of the old regime, I guess. But he's only 3K in min price. So if you really want to get different and another cheap guy that you can run out there in your alt lineups, True Edwards is somebody who could very easily catch a touchdown or, pile up and have 15 plus points or double digit points. Don't even really need that at 3K. So he's somebody that I have on my short list of value actually at the Slaw Tech team, just because they're also in a good spot. And the fact that, yes, everyone's going to be using Thornton. So maybe we can get away with some of these guys being lower owned than they should be. I think there's going to be enough offense to go around, especially the fact that Thornton is really going to be probably, depending on Shelton and how healthy he is, Thornton's probably looking at like 90% of the carries out of the backfield, where if before Crosby went, had to miss this game, we're looking at, a 70, 30 situation between him and the backups. So it's kind of tough to get away from Thornton, even if you want it to turn into an air raid situation where they throw the ball a lot. So I think I eat the chalk with Thornton, and then I play one of possibly two of these L-Tech receivers, and one of them being True Edwards, just because I don't think people will even notice that he's a guy that's going to be an option in this offense. Bachmeier at 5'8", I think has the potential to be chalk for what it's worth. If you're looking at these quarterbacks here, I don't know that Swan makes too much sense, although you can play him. I think it's going to be between Rourke because of his past and probably because of Bachmeier. I think those are your chalkier options for that super flex spot. And I know I'm going to get asked because I always hype the church of 4 running backs, the house of 4 running backs, whatever you want to call it. This would not be a week for that, so we're going to have to use a quarterback in the super flex. And it's probably in Maine going to be one of those two guys. So I'm okay using Bachmeier for sure. And if I have to throw Bracey out there and hope for the classic 550 and a touchdown line, then I'm okay doing that as well.
Did want to touch on the Louisiana Tech side, not at all for DFS or any kind of fantasy purposes, but we do try to have an all name team on this show, and Rowdy Beers early entry for the all name team on the FIU side. Yeah,
it's a pretty cool name. I saw that too. I was like, okay, we need to see what's up with that. You can't go wrong. There's some good names out there in college football this year too. We'll get those throughout the season. All right, so that's pretty much it. The FanDuel side, like I said, they've got the all encompassing slate. So I will kind of touch on that here in a moment, but I know there's still some time to digest, some news to process, but initially, do you have yourself a 3-man core that you feel good about? And I know it's a small slate, so there's going to be a lot of overlap here with the rest of the field.
Yeah. So, I mean, Caleb is cheating, right? Like I can't put Caleb in the core because that's too easy. So if you want to do it, I'll leave it to you to put Caleb at the core. But right. I think we're gonna go with probably gonna go Bachmeier, to be honest with you, in the core at quarterback, and then Hines at running back, and Shepard at receiver. That'll be the 3-man core, excluding the obvious Caleb pick.
Yeah, I think, like you said, that's got to be it with Caleb. Running back Hines for sure for me, and then wide receiver is just so wide open. I think Shepard is the one that we can all agree on, and then one of those cheap guys. I guess at this moment in time, I'll say like Nick Nash, but I'm gonna be releasing the article tomorrow afternoon. It's gonna be tough for me to really narrow it down beyond just the Shepard play at wide receiver, because there's so many different ways to go. All right. Am I still here with us? Okay. Yep. All right. So FanDuel, real quick, they have the UTEP game, Jacksonville State, and they have Notre Dame and Navy. So that one has a little bit of a different approach there at you still want to run Caleb Williams, who's damn near 13K over there. But you have Tyron Smith, who is clearly the best receiver option on the slate there. If they would have included that game, he's just an absolute target hog. The WR1 and the UTEP offense for the last 3 to 4 years has been the best PPR option in the field by far. And then at running back, Audric Estime, he's 9.5, all expensive guys here on FanDuel, but definitely like him against Navy. We know Navy's going to be, obviously running the ball a lot. They're going to get stuffed a lot. And I think that Notre Dame's going to be able to extend plays, and Estime's going to have an opportunity to score a couple of times in this one. Also really like Deion Hankins on the UTEP side there at 7.8 if you're playing on FanDuel this weekend. All right, let's get to PrizePicks. I know you've gone through PrizePicks. So I want you to start us off here, because there's been some changes here or there, but there's still a couple that's sticking out to me. I want to hear what you have to say, because you've been crushing PrizePicks the last 2 years. Once we got you on it, I got to say.
Yeah. Owe you for getting me on there. It's been good to me. So first thing to mention is throughout. I don't recall what day it came out. I think it was it early yesterday? Has it only been a day since they came out?
I think so, yeah.
Throughout in the Discord, anything I throw out in the Discord, it's something I am actually playing. Like I will have put my pick in and then immediately put it in the Discord. So it is not just like these are suggestions. These are things that I am doing in real time, and I want everyone to know that I'm doing it in real time because they will move. Good example of that is, we talked about the under in the San Diego State Ohio game, and we talked about that not being a particularly explosive game. And so when I saw that Curtis Rourke came out with a higher passing yard total than Caleb Williams, that set off some alarm bells to me. And so they had him originally at 270.5. That has since come down, and we took the under on that right away. That was one of them that I threw in the Discord. They now have him at 237.5. So they are also under the 270.5 initial projection. So you want to see that. That's what we call closing line value. It may still continue to go down. I think probably 230 is probably a fair line in terms of what my expectation is. So I would technically still be under at the number that they have him now, but less dramatically so. And I'm not rushing to throw a ton of Curtis Rourke under entries at 237 the way I was at 270. In terms of ones that are still available to take and that I find interesting, I'm glad you mentioned on the FanDuel slate, PPR god Tyron Smith in a 1-point spread game against a Jacksonville State team that lost their best corner. You 5.5 seems like a pretty easy overcall. I think we're going to get there pretty quickly. It's maybe a second quarter number. If he gets in rhythm on a first drive and gets 3 or 4 catches on a first drive, I think we can get there pretty smooth sailing. We also have if we are bullish on the Louisiana Tech passing game, and another thing to mention, because their running back depth chart is a little bit thinned out from what they were expecting, and they don't have quite as many warm bodies. There might be a little bit more emphasis on the passing game, which takes me to Bachmeier, which you can still get at 275.5 passing yards, I believe. Oh, just looked again. It's not there. Okay. Maybe you can't get it at that anymore when they come back on. But as of Wednesday, when I threw it in the Discord, you could get Bachmeier at 275.5. Wanted the over on that, but don't worry because the receiving yards are still there. It looks like we can get Smoke at 59.5. So 60 yards plus. I think we can get there from Smoke. And Cyrus Allen actually is now higher. He started out, I think he started out 50. If I didn't get in on any Cyrus Allen, I was late on that one. But he went up to either 54 or 55, whatever he was at in an intermediate. Now he's actually now above Smoke at 60.5. So they're expecting those guys to be pretty neck and neck, and that's an accurate assessment. But I think they're both going to be closer to like 75 or 80 than 60. So I'm comfortable going over on both of those as of right now, even at their at the increased number for Cyrus Allen. And should Bachmeier come back at anything under like 297, I think I would still be comfortable, on an over on Bachmeier. And the more I'm talking about this offense, the more I'm just like locking Bachmeier as my QB2 across most lineups. I see a lot of ways that this can go right for the Louisiana Tech passing offense, and I want to get pieces of it. So those are the four that I put in the initial play were Rourke under, which obviously we can't quite do in the same way anymore, but Tyron Smith over 5.5, Bachmeier over whatever reasonable number he comes back on the board with, and Smoke Harris over 59.5, which you can still do right now. So that's what I've got thus far. I also, and I haven't touched it yet, but I'm probably also pretty interested in an under on Bangura's rushing yards, which is at 65.5. I think, O'Shawn Allison, like we talked about, gets in the mix enough that he's not quite going to get there. And that game is just a lower scoring game and not a ton of explosiveness out of that. And then is there a Tylen Hines fantasy score number? I haven't seen it. Can we get some passing game exposure to Tylen Hines in some way via PrizePicks?
I don't think so. There's some DraftKings numbers, which I'll pull up in a minute, but I don't think I saw it for PrizePicks.
Yeah. So if
fantasy score for him,
if that does come on at some point, like if we do get a Tylen Hines, either receptions or receiving yards or fantasy score, whatever that is coming in at, I'm taking that over. It's gonna be too low wherever that comes in. So that would be another one to look out for, but it's not available as of right now.
Yeah, so the Hank Bachmeier redemption tour season, we're starting it off. I do agree with you. Just blasting all those law tech numbers. I like Bachmeier a lot. I kind of like this UTEP. I mean, it's not on the main slate. It is on the early DraftKings slate and then main FanDuel, but they have Gavin Hardison, who has proven himself to be adequate when the opponent is lesser. 222.5 pass yards. I think if he's, and he throws the ball a lot, this UTEP offense. So, Tyron Smith's going to ring up over the 5.5 receptions. We have had some pretty good success over the years with the reception overs. That's been kind of the calling card of the show. The Shepard 4.5 receptions also, like you mentioned, but I like the Hardison pass, Tyron Smith receptions, and then coming over to the rushing yards for Deion Hankins, who will be the true blue RB1 there for UTEP. I know they've had some different options over the last couple seasons, but over 65.5 rushing yards. So I like all of those against Jacksonville State. I think this UTEP offense is going to look probably a lot better than it'll be this season, but they're going to look nice here in this first game. So those are the ones that I really kind of heavily looking at right now. Passing yards wise, and that was a great call on Rourke there. Like I said, I'm seeing a bunch of unders on Cordero. I think I'm just not going to touch it because 240 to me seems like he's going to have to throw a lot, but we'll see. The PrizePicks numbers here, I think they're going to be soft this year. Right now they look pretty decent aside from those UTEP ones and the ones you called out, but I also like Audric Estime over 82.5 rushing yards against Navy. Tyree's going to run out of slot, be a receiver this year, and Estime is just going to be finally in a situation where he's going to get the bulk of the carries without having to worry about sharing too often. So that's a good situation to be in the Notre Dame offense. The DraftKings props, which I want to talk a little bit about, I have an anytime touchdown prop here for our guy Nick Nash. Plus 380. I would have loved it to have been even higher than that, but plus 380 anytime touchdown score for Nick Nash. I feel like they get in the goal line area, they might give him a carry. They're going to design some plays. Like, I don't know. I just think Nick Nash is going to score a touchdown here. So I want to get some money on that prop and call it good. And then coming over, you had mentioned Tylen Hines. Just make sure it's still here. I could have swore it was 17.5 like a minute ago, but maybe I looked at it wrong. But 19.5 receiving yards for Tylen Hines. I do like the over on that at minus 115. These Hawaii running backs, man, the RB1, Calvin Turner a couple of years ago, how explosive he was when they turned him into a slot guy. Hines just is going to do a lot for this team. So those are the props that I'm looking at right now. I will add those to the article in addition to PrizePicks plays this year, since we do have some new personalities on the betting side, but I will add some bet stuff to the main article regardless. All right, let's just double check the chat here. It's been lively. I think we have it all in the bag. No, we're looking good. Depth charts mostly out. There's only a couple that may change. There's some two deeps and some other stuff, but I think for the most part we have it. The Saturday morning show, of course, will be reiterating any core plays, any changes that I've had, and any breaking news. It seems like 75% of the Saturday mornings when we wake up, there's either a rumor, some message board information, some injury, some kind of drama. So expect that to happen. And that's usually what we use that Saturday morning show to talk about, which I'll be doing this weekend at 12 p.m. PST instead of the normal 8 a.m. PST time. Jake, any final words? This is a good first run. I was very excited to have you back with me doing this. Any final words before we head out of here and into the sunset for week 0?
Let's make that money on PrizePicks. Get those USC and La Tech receivers right, and may variance be on our side. And do try to hitch my wagon to somewhat of an off-brand player every week. And I think there's no better way to do that than to be on brand and say that Raleek Brown goes for 60 all-purpose yards and 2 touchdowns. And he is going to end up a little bit higher on the depth chart thereafter.
Yeah, absolutely. You've been pretty good about nailing these off key. We try to hit these receiver plays and calling the touchdowns. So I like that quite a bit. I'm on board with it. And then JPU's just asked real quick about the top FanDuel plays. Audric Estemi on FanDuel for sure. And then Cordell David is $7K, which is really cheap for FanDuel pricing. He's kind of a sneakier play there on that site. All right, that'll do it for us. Appreciate everybody who tuned in for the Week 0 show. We'll be back next Thursday, 9 p.m. PST with a bigger slate, Week 1. Let's make lots of money. See you guys Saturday morning. See you.